weathered and tilting into more of an X than anything perpendicular. A sash across it, our angel. Red artificial flowers, crumbling brown organic ones, stuffed animals around the base. A red velvet ribbon, the kind intended for oversized Christmas gifts, tied around the top and already frayed and faded from weeks of rain and sun. She coasted the 10 feet to her driveway, then slowly pressed the gas as the car rumbled over the gravel. Her first reactions were horror and empathy, cut with that strange exhilaration she'd learned not to feel guilty about when passing car wrecks on the highway. Later that fall, when she became fairly sure that she was a terrible person, she would at least have this to hang on to. She did feel sorry. For those first few moments, she knew she was sorry. So it goes on from there, but basically what's happened in this story, this woman's been away for the summer. She comes back, and we've all seen these roadside memorials, right, to someone who died in a car accident. In this case, it was a motorcycle accident. The impulse for me to write that story was driving on a long road trip and seeing those and thinking, my gosh, but what if that was your lawn? You know, it's one thing if it's beside the highway. What if someone took it upon themselves to build this memorial right in your lawn? And after a certain amount of time, do you want it gone? It's really tacky. Like, you feel really bad for the person, and what if that's not your religion? And what if? And so that cross is something, it's sort of the interrupting force in this person's universe. She's tried to create this really safe life for herself after a divorce, and this is the thing that comes in and really bothers her and makes her change a lot of things. So I'm going to read to you also, and then I'll stop, the opening of a story called The Briefcase. And what I'm going to skip the very first paragraph, which is just talking about someone's in a chain gang, basically. He's chained by the wrist to other people, and the first paragraph is just what he's thinking about, but I'm going to skip that. In the early morning of December 1st, the sun was finally warming them all, enough that they could walk faster. With his left hand, he adjusted the loop of steel that cuffed his right hand to the line of doomed men. He was starved. His wrist was thin. His body was cold. The cuff slipped off. In one breath, he looked back to the men behind him and forward to the man limping ahead, and knew that neither saw his naked red wrist. Each saw only his own mother weeping in a kitchen, his own love on a bed in white sheets and sunlight. He walked in step to the end of the block. And then, I will skip a little bit more, he kind of is just thinking about his own life, how he used to be a chef. And here was his hand, twisted free of the chain. And here he was, running and crawling, until he was through a doorway. It was a building of empty classrooms, part of the university he'd never attended. He watched out the bottom corner of a second-story window as the young soldiers stopped the line, counted 99 men, shouted to each other, shouted at the prisoners in the panicked voices of children who barely filled the shoulders of their uniforms. One soldier, a bigger one, a louder one, stopped a man walking by, a man in a suit with a briefcase, a beard, some sort of professor. The soldiers stripped him of his coat, his shirt, his leather case, and cuffed him to the chain. They marched again. And as soon as they had passed, no, not that soon, many minutes later, when he had the stomach, the chef ran down to the street and collected the man's briefcase, coat, and shirt. So this is the start of a story where basically he was just looking out for himself. He escaped this line and then sees someone else put in his place. And the story is basically about the briefcase and about what he does with the contents of the briefcase and trying to replace this man in his life. But that is, you can see, big change in the beginning of the story, right? And it's the place where that story starts moving. Without that change at the beginning, the rest of the story wouldn't happen. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to see what questions you guys have. Yeah? We have time for one question. Okay, cool. One question to make it a really feedback. Yeah, and that's different. I think that there are, for those of you who are interested, I think that there are a lot of closed groups where you can share something with each other, and they're going to be able to give you feedback, you're going to be able to give feedback to other people, but it's not out there for all the world to see forever. And so I think if you can find something like that, I think that's really useful, and those do exist. So yeah. Okay. Thank you all very much.